Workplaces drive progress and productivity, with millions operating machinery and maintaining facilities daily. But within these hubs of industry, safety and danger hang in fragile balance, where split-second mistakes turn routine tasks into horror. These are 5 of the most disturbing workplace deaths that shattered not just safety protocols, but lives. It was a clear spring morning in Liverpool's city centre, where the Unity building towered 21 stories above Victoria Street. Among the workers present that day were David Bottomley, 53, and his 17-year-old son Clayton from Castleford, West Yorkshire. Known for their strong bond, the father and son not only worked together, but shared a dedication to their trade. David, a skilled insulation fitter subcontracted by AAI Selby for the past 18 months, had built a reputation for reliability and precision. Clayton, eager to follow in his father's footsteps, had joined as an apprentice just 6 months earlier. His enthusiasm and natural aptitude quickly stood out, and colleagues admired how effortlessly the two worked as a team. At approximately 3:30 p.m. on May 19, 2021, the Bottomleys were positioned high above the city streets. Inside a nearby office building, Thomas Blanchfield sat in a meeting room, his attention shifting to the platform outside. The structure had begun emitting unusual clicking sounds, a noise that reminded him of a roller coaster before a steep drop. He observed as the right side of the platform dipped slightly. David and Clayton appeared to brace themselves, their bodies tense as the ominous sounds continued. Within seconds, the platform plunged, falling 14 stories before crashing onto the 7th floor. The impact reverberated through the surrounding streets, drawing horrified onlookers. Emergency services arrived swiftly, but David had already succumbed to massive blunt force chest injuries. Clayton, though critically injured, was still alive. Paramedics transported him to the intensive care unit at Aintree Hospital, where his mother and family maintained a constant vigil. For 4 days, doctors fought to save Clayton as his family prayed for a miracle. Despite their hopes, his injuries had caused severe, irreversible brain damage. On May 23rd, Clayton passed away. In a final act that reflected the kindness both he and his father were known for, Clayton's organs were donated, giving others a chance at life. This decision, supported by his grieving family, meant that even in death, the teenager continued to help others, a trait he had learned from his father. The devastating loss of both father and son sent shockwaves through their hometown of Castleford. Friends remembered David as a mentor figure who took pride in teaching young workers the trade, while Clayton was recalled as a bright, promising young man who had his whole life ahead of him. Their local community rallied around the family, organizing fundraisers to support David's widow and Clayton's mother through the unimaginable tragedy of losing both a husband and a son. The investigation that followed exposed a catastrophic mechanical failure. Daily safety checks had been completed that morning, including visual inspections and functional tests of the UP, down, and stop switches. However, these routine examinations failed to detect a critical issue within the platform's gearboxes. Paul Shaw, a project manager for site operators Lang O'Rourke, later testified that the platforms had been in use for at least 5 years. The workers responsible for conducting daily safety checks had never been informed about an additional brake test requirement. The equipment's manual, which outlined this crucial procedure, had never been provided to them. The health and safety executive determined that fatigue had caused the failure of pinion shafts in both gearboxes, leading to the brakes disconnecting. When the second pinion shaft failed, nothing remained to slow the platform's descent. The weight of the structure alone dictated its fatal drop. A 5-day inquest in Liverpool concluded with a jury ruling the deaths as accidental. The tragedy left a lasting mark not only on the construction industry, but on all who knew the Bottomleys, serving as a stark reminder of how workplace accidents can devastate families and communities in an instant. It was a cold February morning in South Lyon, Michigan, where the industrial complex of Michigan Seamless Tube stretched across 400 McMunn Street, its towering structures dominating the landscape. Inside, workers moved through the vast facility, overseeing the intricate process of manufacturing steel tubes. Among them was Daniel Hill, known to those around him as Moose, a nickname that reflected both his stature and warm presence. For him, it was supposed to be another routine Saturday on the job. At 54, Daniel had been with the company since April 2017. Just 7 months earlier, he and his wife Pamela had settled into their dream home in South Lyon. leaving Whitmore Lake behind for the quiet countryside. Neighbors knew them as a reserved but friendly couple, often seen admiring the deer that wandered through their property. A proud veteran who had served in the Army's motor pool, Daniel was known throughout the community for his extraordinary generosity and willingness to help anyone he met. That afternoon, around 12:21 p.m., Daniel was working near an industrial vat filled with a heated sulfuric acid solution. The tank contained a 10 to 12% concentration of the chemical, reaching at least 160 degrees Fahrenheit, a necessary condition for the steel treatment process. The air around it carried the sting of chemicals, thickened by the heat radiating from the solution. Then, in an instant, the routine shattered. Daniel fell into the vat, becoming completely submerged in the scalding liquid. Fire Chief Vogel would later describe how fellow employees found him struggling in the tank, his entire body immersed in the burning acid. Without hesitation, his co-workers rushed forward, reaching into the burning liquid despite the danger to themselves. The acid seared their hands as they fought to pull him free, leaving them with chemical burns of their own. When emergency responders arrived, Daniel had been moved to a safety shower, his co-workers desperately trying to wash away the acid that covered every inch of his body. Despite the trauma, he remained conscious, speaking through the agony. Paramedics quickly transported him to the University Hospital in Ann Arbor, where doctors fought for hours to stabilize his condition. For 11 hours, he endured the severe chemical burns that covered his body. His family, his wife, daughters Ashley Fields and Jacqueline Dean, and his beloved grandchildren Olivia and Connor Field, whom he lovingly called his little angels, held on to hope. But as night fell, the extent of the damage became undeniable. At 11:30 p.m., Daniel succumbed to his injuries, marking the end of a life devoted to hard work, family, and service. The investigation that followed exposed troubling details about Michigan Seamless Tube's safety history. Since 2012, the company had faced 7 workplace safety violations, accumulating fines that totaled $93,000. Just months before Daniel's death, the state had imposed a $17,500 fine for a repeated violation involving unprotected pinch points, an issue that had endangered multiple employees. The Michigan Occupational Safety and Health Administration launched a full inquiry into the circumstances surrounding the accident. A company spokesman later described Daniel as a valued employee and stated that Michigan Seamless Tube would fully cooperate with investigators. For the South Lyon community, the loss echoed a past tragedy. In 2007, another worker, Kevin Wilson, had died at the same facility after being struck by heavy machinery. Daniel's death became another painful chapter in the factory's history. In the days that followed, the United Steelworkers Local 1900 established a GoFundMe page to support Daniel's family. Friends and colleagues shared memories of his generosity and dedication, recalling his years of military service in the Army's motor pool and his deep love for dogs. His passing left a void not only in his workplace, but in the hearts of those who knew him. Beyond the grief, the tragedy raised urgent questions about industrial safety and the risks faced by workers in hazardous environments. Daniel's story became a sobering reminder of how quickly routine tasks could turn fatal when safety measures failed. It was a crisp October morning in Boston's financial district, where glass-covered office towers reflected the early autumn sun. Among them stood 100 Summer Street, a 32-story building that had long been part of Nicholas J. Marks's routine. At 40 years old, the experienced window cleaner from East Weymouth had spent more than 2 decades mastering the job. Known among his colleagues as a really good guy, Marks had earned a reputation as the person other workers turned to with safety concerns or questions. That Monday, October 23, 2023, Marks arrived as he always did, methodically preparing his equipment. He checked his bosun's chair, a device designed to suspend workers high above the city streets, ensuring it was secure. With 2 young children at home, he understood the risks of his profession and took safety seriously. An expert in washing windows safely after more than 20 years in the industry, Marks had cleaned the windows of 100 Summer Street without incident for years. As the morning progressed, he moved steadily along the building's exterior, his practiced motions making the difficult work seem effortless. At some point, he transitioned into his bosun's chair, a maneuver he had performed without issue throughout his career. But this time, something was different. Unbeknownst to him, the equipment he relied on had critical flaws. The rope descent system and fall protection gear had not been properly inspected or maintained. The ropes, which should have been safeguarded against wear, had been left vulnerable to damage. These oversights had gone unnoticed until the moment they failed. Without warning, the anchor line snapped. In an instant, his secondary lifeline, meant to prevent a fall, also gave way. There was no time to react. Witnesses on the street below saw him plummet from the building's heights. The impact against a parapet wall was devastating, leaving behind visible damage that would later become a key detail in the investigation. Emergency responders arrived quickly, finding remnants of his equipment scattered across the area: a shoe, broken pieces of plastic safety gear, and the remains of his bosun's chair. The scene told a grim story of catastrophic equipment failure, a preventable disaster that would soon become one of the most scrutinized workplace accidents in recent Boston history. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration launched an immediate investigation into Sky Safety Inc., the company responsible for the worksite. What inspectors uncovered was alarming. The company had failed to conduct proper equipment inspections, leaving workers unknowingly exposed to life-threatening risks. Employees had not received adequate training on identifying worn or damaged ropes, and safety measures meant to protect against falls had been neglected. As the investigation deepened, Sky Safety Inc.'s history came under scrutiny. Inspectors found that its predecessor, High Rise Inc., had been cited for similar violations in both May 2019 and December 2013 at other Boston worksites. Despite these previous infractions, dangerous practices had continued. Regulators responded with swift action. OSHA issued citations for multiple safety violations, including 2 willful violations, 4 serious violations, and 2 repeat violations. The proposed penalties totaled $447,087, a stark acknowledgement of the negligence that had led to the fatal fall. The citations detailed specific failures. Ropes had not been properly padded or protected, equipment had been used with incompatible connectors, and the building's anchorage points had not been certified as required. Sky Safety Inc. denied responsibility, insisting that new safety equipment had been introduced shortly before the accident. The company argued that Marks had received thorough training and suggested that an unseen metal edge on the building had severed the rope, shifting blame onto the property owner. However, OSHA's investigation found no evidence to support this claim. Marks's death sent shockwaves through Boston's window cleaning community, raising urgent concerns about industry-wide safety standards. His loss underscored the life-or-death importance of routine inspections, proper equipment maintenance, and strict adherence to safety regulations. For his family, the findings of the investigation did little to ease the pain. No penalties or citations could change the reality that his 2 young children would grow up without their father. He had dedicated years to mastering a dangerous profession, only to lose his life to preventable failures. His case became a rallying point for workplace safety advocates, a stark reminder of what happens when safety measures are treated as an afterthought. In professions where workers put their lives on the line each day, the margin for error is unforgiving. Proper training, thorough inspections, and well-maintained equipment are not just guidelines, they are the difference between life and death. It was a humid morning on July 8, 2009, in Camden, New Jersey, the air heavy with the sweet scent of chocolate drifting from the Cocoa Services Inc. plant. Inside the facility on North 36th Street, workers moved through their daily routines, converting hard chocolate into liquid for companies like Hershey Foods. Among them was Vincent Smith II, a 29-year-old temporary worker who had only been at the plant for 2 weeks. Vincent had recently returned to Camden in search of work and was assigned a fundamental yet essential task: feeding raw chocolate into the melting vats. The job required standing on a 9-foot-high platform above an 8-foot-deep tank where the chocolate was heated to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The platform itself lacked guardrails, offering no protection against falls. The floor was covered with cardboard, which had become slick with spilled chocolate, making every step a risk. Workers navigated the area without safety harnesses, carefully balancing as they loaded chunks of chocolate into the vat below. By mid-morning, at approximately 10:30, Vincent was on the platform, carrying out his task. Beneath him, large mechanical blades, known as agitators, churned continuously to mix the melting chocolate. The emergency shutoff switch for these mechanisms was located inconveniently down a flight of stairs, several feet away, out of immediate reach. A moment of lost footing changed everything. The slick surface provided no stability, and with no railing or harness to prevent it, Vincent slipped. There was nothing to stop his fall as he plunged through an unguarded opening into the vat of liquid chocolate. The agitator blades, still turning, struck him in the head. He was submerged almost instantly, disappearing beneath the surface. His co-workers reacted immediately. One rushed to the emergency shutoff switch, but the distance made every second crucial. Others attempted to reach him, but the thick liquid and the force of the agitators made it impossible. Vincent remained fully submerged for approximately 10 minutes. By the time paramedics arrived and extracted his body, it was too late. He had drowned within the first few minutes. Outside the facility's gates, Vincent's father and aunt, Teresa Smith, waited anxiously for news. When confirmation of his death arrived, grief turned to devastation. Questions arose about the lack of basic safety measures, the absence of harnesses, and why the plant had allowed such conditions to persist. The investigation that followed exposed critical failures in the facility's operations. The plant had been running without a valid mercantile license, avoiding official inspections. OSHA identified 12 serious safety violations, including inadequate supervision, poor engineering, and the lack of barriers. The shutoff mechanism's location was also cited as a major hazard. Following the incident, Cocoa Services Inc. and its owner, Lyons & Sons, were fined $1,152 by local authorities. On January 11, 2010, OSHA issued additional fines totaling $40,000 for the violations. Adjusted for inflation, this amounted to approximately $57,996 in 2024. In July 2010, Vincent's parents filed a wrongful death lawsuit, citing 32 safety failures. The lawsuit named multiple defendants, including Lyons & Sons, Cocoa Services Corporation, and the Blommer Chocolate Company. Attorneys initially requested a jury trial, but the case was ultimately settled out of court in April 2013. Operations at the plant ceased for the day, but the repercussions extended far beyond a temporary shutdown. Vincent's death became a stark example of the consequences of workplace neglect. For his family, the loss was immeasurable, made even more painful by the realization that a simple safety harness could have saved his life. In the aftermath, the tragedy fueled discussions about safety standards in food processing facilities and the heightened risks faced by temporary workers in industrial settings. Though the incident became a catalyst for change, the cost of that change had come far too late. It was a humid August morning in Prentiss, Mississippi, a small town nestled 60 miles southeast of Jackson. The remnants of Tropical Storm Debbie still hung in the air, leaving thousands without power across multiple states. For 20-year-old Jayton Allen Stallhut, the day was another step in the long effort to restore electricity, a task he approached with dedication. As a contracted utility worker for EXO, an energy company handling storm-related repairs, Jayton had already proven himself. His work ethic stood out among his colleagues, shaped by years of discipline and determination. Born in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and later moving to Chocota, Oklahoma, he had earned the rank of Eagle Scout with 7 palms, a reflection of his leadership and perseverance. On August 6, 2024, Jayton arrived at Ray Street in Prentiss to inspect a damaged power pole. The air was thick with post-storm humidity as he prepared for what should have been a routine task. Just 2 months earlier, on June 10th, he had married Erin Clark in a joyful ceremony at Brush Hill Baptist Church, their future full of promise. Around midday, Jayton began his climb. The storm had left behind hazardous conditions, making safety precautions more critical than ever. With his training and experience, he understood the risks, yet an unseen danger awaited him. As he worked, he came into contact with a live wire. The electrical current surged through him in an instant. A coworker, witnessing the accident, immediately called 911 and rushed to administer CPR, following emergency protocols that all utility workers are trained for but hope never to use. Within minutes, the sound of approaching sirens cut through the quiet town as paramedics arrived. Jayton was transported to the nearest hospital, where medical teams fought to save his life. Despite their efforts, the severity of the electrocution left no chance for recovery. Hours later, Jefferson County Coroner Deidre M. Johnson recorded the cause of death as electrocution, ruling it a tragic accident. News of Jayton's passing spread quickly through the close-knit community. Those who knew him recalled a young man who had an easy smile and accepted people as they were. Friends described his love for adventure, his enjoyment of Chinese food, especially sushi, and his enthusiasm for deviled eggs. He had a way of brightening any room he entered. Chief Richard Browning of the Prentice Police Department later confirmed details of the accident. While toxicology results were still pending, the circumstances pointed to a tragic misstep rather than negligence. Investigators focused on how such an incident could happen, despite established safety measures. In the days that followed, support poured in for Jayton's family. A GoFundMe campaign was launched to assist his wife and parents, with donations quickly accumulating. Friends and colleagues shared tributes online, recounting stories of his kindness, dedication, and unwavering positivity. His obituary painted the picture of a young man who embraced life fully. His achievements as an Eagle Scout, his love for the outdoors, and his commitment to helping others stood as part of his lasting legacy. For his wife, his family, and those closest to him, the future they had imagined with Jayton was now left unfinished. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the risks utility workers face, particularly in the aftermath of natural disasters. Their work is essential, yet the dangers can be unforgiving. Even the most experienced professionals, those who follow every precaution, remain vulnerable to the unpredictable hazards of their field. Thanks for watching. Next, we reveal the dark side of Olympic glory, where dreams of immortality turned into unthinkable tragedy on the world's biggest stage. Click to watch, and we'll see you there.